Hi, I'm Ellie Harrison. I'm an artist from the UK, and this is my work here. It's called The History of Financial Crisis. I made this in 2009, which was the start, about 6 months after the Lehman shock, as they call it here, the beginning of the global financial crisis at the moment. And it was my way of trying to understand why capitalism keeps producing these moments of crisis. So I decided to do some research and to track back over the last 100 years and to find out how many major financial crises there'd been, and then to visualize that history using 11 second-hand popcorn making machines. So that's what you can see here.
Do you like popcorn yourself?
I do like popcorn, actually. It's a very healthy vegan snack, and being a vegan.
You're vegan.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's also very, very cheap. But what's interesting in this context is it's as a product, it's probably got the biggest markup possible. So when you buy popcorn in a cinema, you know, you're being absolutely ripped off because it only costs, hardly anything to produce. So that's quite interesting. But also, when the machines go off themselves and when the popcorn starts popping, it is this really manic, really frenzied moment of time where everything's just flying everywhere, and then the popcorn machine switches off again, and all that's left is a sort of terrible mess all over the table. So I really like the analogy between the popcorn and the financial crisis.
And you can use that
Yeah.
to explain that.
So over here we've got a little key to the installation. So it's like a timeline, and it starts off in 1929 with the Wall Street crash, and then 1937, big recession in the US. But then what happens, and what's really interesting, what I discovered from doing the installation, is that everything goes really quiet for a long period of time. And then in the 70s, in the UK, we had a terrible recession, stock market crash. But then
Before Margaret Thatcher.
before Margaret Thatcher, exactly, and that's what brought her into power. Then this crisis that happened in the UK, Black Monday, was actually a result of her policies, I think, a result of all of her free market economics and the Big Bang, where she deregulated deregulated all of the financial transactions happening in the city. But then what happens is there's so much activity in the last 20 years. This is kind of the point, I suppose, of the installation, is that if you come to visit the exhibition early in the day, you don't see very much. But if you come in the last hour, the last 2 hours, you suddenly have all of these popcorn machines going off and all of this activity. So it really illustrates how financial crises are becoming much, much more frequent up to the present day. So that was, what I...
Probably the circulation speed of the finance.
Of the transactions, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because they talk about these microtransactions now and how everything is computerized, and this has been happening since the 80s onwards. So I suppose it is.
Do you have any criteria to choose these?
These were the main ones. Yeah, I mean, it's quite layman's. I mean, I'm not an economist. I'm an artist, so it's just a quite surface level research. It's what I could gather from the internet when I was just doing this research. And these were the key ones that were listed as having major impact in the specific countries, but then having repercussions around the world.
And did you have any kind of, how do you say, the criteria?
For choosing the popcorn machines? Yeah. Well, the thing about the popcorn machines is they're all second-hand. So with a lot of my work, I use found objects, but I always like to use second-hand objects, and I bought them all from eBay. So every single one of these popcorn machines has come from a different home in the UK, and it's been posted to me. So what I wanted to do was to make sure that no two were the same, so that all the different models of popcorn making machines, I mean, you can get more than this. There's more that I don't even have. But what I was fascinated about in terms of the installation was the fact that this is essentially a pointless machine. You know, you could make the popcorn yourself on a pan, on your hob. If you just put it into a pan and heat it up, then it will start to pop. So I was just fascinated by the fact that there are so many different variations of what is essentially a pointless machine.
That was popular in UK?
I don't think it is particularly popular. You know, it's still quite,
I haven't seen very many times.
Yeah, it's still quite a niche item, a consumer item. And that's what's quite interesting. That's why so many of them come up on eBay. It's because people buy it and they use it a couple of times and then it just sits around in their kitchen and then they want to get rid of it. So in itself, the fact that there's so many different variations of this is quite a nice observation on capitalism as well.
Okay. And it's interesting that you have a sweeper here.
Yes. Oh yeah, this is another important part of the installation because every day it's sort of like a performance with the popcorn machine. So they go off one by one and they're like reenacting this history of financial crisis. But it makes a lot of mess, and every day it makes a lot of mess on purpose. But every day there's about this much popcorn, because this is from yesterday, produced. So part of the work, the performance, is that the poor gallery staff, apologies, have to sweep up all of the mess and put it on the pile. So the exhibition's going to be on for nearly a month. And what you'll get here is another quite a nice observation on capitalism as well, is you'll have a food mountain piling up. So, yeah, exactly. So by the end of the month, you know, this will have become quite a substantial pile of popcorn in the corner there, which is another kind of absurd byproduct of the capitalist system. So, yeah.
I